I was just going to go off your screen tonight. Okay. Okay. Right, James and Todd, you're on speaker. Okay. Hi, Todd. Good afternoon, councillors, members of the public, officers. Welcome along. I declare this meeting open, and I acknowledge this is Wadani Noongar Budja, and I pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Councillors, Councillor Brown requests approval to participate by phone. He is situated at Unit 710 Quarry Street, Fremantle. Can I have someone move that he be permitted? Councillor Giles, Councillor Plum, all in favour? That's carried unanimously. So, Councillor Brown, you're in. And Councillor Hayward is also participating under the emergency provisions of COVID-19. He's still in self-isolation. So, welcome to you, Councillor Hayward.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Councillors, under announcements, I was advised this afternoon that the business support grants has almost been fully subscribed, which is a terrific outcome. Details of that have been sent through to you on a periodic basis. Thank you. Declarations of interest. I've declared a financial interest in 10.4.1. Councillor Steck has also declared a financial interest in the same item. Are there any other declarations of interest, councillors? Thank you. Can I have someone move confirmation of the minutes of the previous meeting? Councillor Yip, seconder Councillor Giles. All in favour?
Aye.
And
Aye.
Thank you, that's carried unanimously. Thank you. 712, minutes of the advisory committees. There are two there, Disability Access and Inclusion and the Policy Review. Can I have someone move that they've accepted and noted, please? Councillor McCleary, seconder. Councillor Plum, all in favour? Councillor Hayward?
Aye.
Councillor,
Aye.
thank you, that's carried unanimously. So tonight we have requests from Mr Fairfowl of Rowe Group to speak to item 10.4.1. Those who consent, please indicate.
Aye. Aye.
That's carried unanimously. And we also have requests from Mr Ross Underwood to talk to the same item. Those who consent, please indicate.
Aye. Aye.
That's carried unanimously. Thank you, gents. And when the time comes, the Deputy Mayor will invite you to come up and present. Right, dealing with tonight's items, coming out, because these require absolute majority decisions, is 10.1.1, 10.1.6, 10.1.7, and of course 10.4.1. And we'll deal with the other items later in the meeting. Does anybody have any other matters they wish to raise? Can I have someone move the balance, please? Councillor McWell, second to Councillor McCleary, all in favour?
Aye. Aye.
That's carried unanimously, thank you. So 10.1.1, Council, we require an absolute majority. Can I have someone move the recommendation? Councillor McCleary, second up. Councillor Yip. Any discussion? I'll put it all in favour.
Aye. Aye.
That's carried unanimously, thank you. 10.1.6 also requires an absolute majority. Can I have someone move that? Councillor McCleary, Councillor Plum, any discussion? I'll put it all in favour.
Aye. Aye.
That's carried unanimously, thank you. 10.1.7 also requires an absolute majority. Can I have someone move it, please? Councillor Giles, Councillor Kozisek, any discussion? I'll put it all in favour.
Aye. Aye.
That's carried unanimously, thank you. Sorry, Councillor Steele. Councillor Steele votes against, but that's carried. I'll now hand over to Councillor McGuell.
Okay, thanks councillors. Sean, sorry I didn't get your last name, mate, but I'll just invite you to come with your presentation. Mr. Fairforth, thank you. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you this evening. My name is Sean Fairfowl. I am a planner with Row Group. I'm here to discuss item 10.4.1, which is the proposed amendment to the local planning strategy, along with an amendment to the...
Sorry, Sean, is that microphone on, Greg?
I think so.
I'll just get you
speak up a little bit.
Yep, thank you.
It also includes an amendment to the town planning scheme or the local planning scheme. We're here to raise some concerns about the proposal, taking the view that nothing about this proposal seems very well considered. We're surprised that it would get support from the city at this time. Usually when we deal with retail developments, we take advantage of some of the benefits and the activity that retail brings in, and we try and leverage other planning outcomes. This hasn't been the case in this instance. There's no attempt to increase densities, there's no main street outcome, there's no urban form improvements, and there's no pedestrian infrastructure or any other community benefits associated with this development. This is just a 1980s proposal appearing to be based on the whim of a landowner. It smacks of opportunism rather than a well-considered outcome. There are a significant number of vacancies within the city centre and also the other centres around the city. There is an oversupply of retail floor space in the city currently, and this is demonstrated by the turnover data that was included in the report and also available elsewhere. And in terms of turnover, turnover in Bunbury for retail establishments based on a square metre basis is about 50 to 70% what it is in Perth. And that's based on even with a similar amount of retail expenditure by residents. The modelling that this proposal relies on is out of date. It's based on modelling between 2011 and 2016. Retailing is substantially changed since then. Bunbury Forum, for example, has lost 25% of its square metre or per square metre income between 2015 and 2018. None of that's recognised in this report. Since then, the retail market's got worse, not better, and we've got COVID-19 further impacting on retail development. Now is not the time to be supporting additional floor space within the city of Bunbury. Now is the time for the city to be rallying around its existing landowners and tenants. There are plenty of mums and dads who have mortgaged their houses to run shops or similar businesses within your city, and many of them rely on the close association with other similar shops and businesses. The creation of a new centre, which will attract people away from the existing centres, will cause hardship to these people. Now is the time to be promoting the use of existing vacant buildings rather than promoting a new unplanned centre. We're also concerned that the decision to support this amendment is premature, as there's not been adequate traffic modelling, noise analysis, none of that's been undertaken to date in any great detail. We would request that the city support the numerous landowners and tenants, if the buildings are tenanted, and not support the whim of one landowner. We acknowledge that sometime in the future there might be a need for a centre in approximately this location, but this proposal doesn't demonstrate that that time is now, and it's quite clear that time isn't now, and accordingly we think the city should wait until you've undertaken a full review or the next full review of your town planning scheme and local planning strategy before you embark on promoting new retail development in an area outside your existing centres. Earlier today, and some of you may or may not have seen it, I sent you an email which included an alternative recommendation, and I would ask that you endorse that recommendation rather than the proposed recommendation from staff to approve the development. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. And Mr. Underwood.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Deputy
Ross.
Mayor, councillors and staff. Now, to begin with, we've been working on this project for around 2 to 3 years now. There's been a lot of detailed information that has been presented in support of this. Now, I understand that there are some commercial competitors such as Prime West, who you heard from earlier, who understandably do not like retail competition because it works in their best interests. However, we believe this proposal is best for the community and the city as a whole. To give you an idea, this isn't a significant proposal, but what it is it allows for a 3-storey mixed-use development with essentially a mini-mart, some retail tenancies such as a fish and chip shop, barber, cafe and that kind of nature of development. But it's also supported by residential in a shop-top format. We estimate that would allow for around 34 residential apartments, and there's certainly a demand or an unmet demand for that kind of living. It would suit things such as tradespeople who don't want a high maintenance house because they're out all day, retired people who don't have the energy to maintain large premises, single parents who want to be close to Coimbra Primary School, and that kind of thing. Now, the residential component's quite important for a number of reasons. Firstly, it increases the population close to in the inner areas of the Bunbury CBD. More population creates more people who are buying more things in the city centre. What this local centre also does is it allows for the city to undertake further investigations for basically an increased density hub around this centre that wouldn't otherwise be able to happen. Because when we're planning for higher density areas and more population, we need amenities and conveniences. This centre provides for that in an area which, as the previous presenter mentioned, is in a location which is suitable for this kind of activity. The reason we say it's suitable is because there's no other convenience type retail within at least 800 metres walking distance of this site, and that's based on a standard town planning principle of having centres within a 5-minute walking distance, which is a comfortable walking distance. It's about 400 metres. And we've previously provided information to show that there are no other convenience retailing centres within walkable distance of this site. So, as we mentioned, there has been a lot of work done previously by Simon Marmion and Co Economicus about 3 years ago now. It was based on data that was up to date at the time, and Simon Marmion and Co has also confirmed through information which is before you in the appendices that the changes and updates to the data don't have any significant impact on the conclusions and recommendations of that work. In other words, the minimal impact that this work showed in relation to other centres still remains a minimal impact. The impact that was calculated was between 1% and 1.3%, and the work that was done by Praxis in its peer review said that a significant impact is around 10%, so we are far under having any kind of significant impact on other retailers. Now, I recognise that we're currently in a bit of a situation with the COVID-19 crisis. It is having impacts. They're not broad impacts. There's sectors of the retail community which are doing very well. Retail, homewares, hardware, that kind of thing are doing exceptionally well in this current market. But nonetheless, there is still a need to stimulate the economy. So this development provides one way of providing stimulation to the retail sector in this area. And
So I'll just
you're
just on 5 minutes now as well,
Thank
Ross.
you.
I'll just get you to summarise at the end there. Thank you.
So we'd ask Council not to stifle development, but to look at ways of stimulating development in this current environment. That's all I'd have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Underwood. Councillors, we have an executive recommendation in front of us. Do we have a mover? Oh, Councillor McCleary. Councillor McCleary, seconder, Councillor Kozisek. Councillor McCleary.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. There are exciting times as well as uncertain times that we have at the moment. And I think any new development in any town or city is very courageous, quite frankly. And for this one, I believe that we should get behind it because there's two elements here, as was pointed out to us. And the first element that really makes me excited is we're going to have families living closer to the CBD. That really attracts me. Also, it is not a shopping centre. It's kind of the new vogue corner shop that's going to be there. Mainly used for the residents and for the people working in the area. And don't forget that we're already thinking of and have a vision for around Brown Street through that area for this business as well. So that's going to also bring in more people, more residential. And so I see our CBD being not what it is today, different, residential, mixed, coffee strips, stuff like that. A very modern Bunbury coming forward with the beginning of this development. So I would sincerely hope that you will support this. I can understand the angst because there are lots of businesses in town. I have a building in town that is part empty. I get it. But I see this as an opportunity for stimulus in the Bunbury area, confidence as well, that people will see that we're moving forward. Yeah, we're scared of COVID, but hey, we're in there, we've got our rolled up our sleeves and we're continuing on to best to our ability. And we need to encourage our developers that we have that are interested in coming to Bunbury and around the Bunbury area to develop this area for us. So it might even stimulate the CBD with them thinking of the property owners thinking of innovative ways that they can build their properties that they have and to renew the actual CBD. So I would hope that you will support the executive recommendation.
Thanks, Councillor McCleary. Councillor Kozisek.
The proposed development by Citygate at the Homemaker Centre has the potential to create a community in Bunbury. Now, I've thought about this long and hard. I was one of those businesses that was forced to close several years ago when the retail market died. But the only way we're going to improve the retail market is to improve our population. And with population, we need housing. Apartments aimed at a mix of people and occupants, women over 50, singles, young people, young couples, the whole mix. I see this as an opportunity for us to create a community in that area. And it brings to mind actually an ABC program that's on at the moment, running at the moment, called The Heights, which was actually filmed in Fremantle, if anybody has seen that. And it's based on a 6-storey apartment block with a little mini mart at the side, and the way this community has developed around an apartment. We have the opportunity to develop this. I don't see it as a threat to the CBD. I think it's actually going to be a benefit to the CBD. We need more heads, we need more people walking around. Where are we? The amendment to the City of Bunbury Local Planning Scheme is timely in that the future we talk about encompasses livability of a city, and I think this is about livability. Being able to walk to work or ride a bike, being able to pop into the corner store to buy dinner on the way home. COVID-19 has certainly changed the way that we work, our mindset of work, work, work. We must remember that we do not live to work, but we work to live. And I think this is a fantastic opportunity to improve on this. The idea of selling the family home that has a large garden but takes a lot to maintain and moving into an apartment that is close to so many amenities, for me is very appealing. And I'm part of that age group, that market, that I'm almost over maintaining a garden. I think the fact that we have 34 apartments here, mixed 1, 2, 3 bedrooms, gives us an absolute opportunity to increase vibrancy in the CBD and the surrounding areas. So I suggest that we really support this and support that Bunbury can move ahead and hopefully replicate more apartments in that area. I think it'll be fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kozisek, was there a speaker against? Councillor Plum.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor and councillors. Before I begin my argument against this executive motion, I'd like to first acknowledge the hard work and the due diligence the officers have made in order to bring this item to council. It's been mentioned tonight, it's been in the making for a couple of years, so I understand a lot of hard work's gone into this. But councillors, this motion and the planning scheme amendment it carries clearly does not reflect the wishes of our community, nor is it conducive to growing our CBD. There are a couple of observations I'd like to make about the executive motion, but before I go into that further, I'd like to point out 2 relevant graphs that came out of the market community survey completed by the City of Bunbury. The first one, councillors, you've all seen these graphs. The first one is a priorities window which shows responses as a priority to the residents of Bunbury for the City to focus its attention on. On this graph, the highest ranking priority for Bunbury residents was the CBD, followed closely by economic development. The second graph, which you've all seen before, is a community trends window. This graph shows responses to the question, how would you rate the performance in the following areas? And on this graph, the lowest performing and highest ranking response was given to the area of CBD, followed closely by economic activation. Councillors, we must listen to what the residents of Bunbury are saying to us, and I believe voting for this executive motion will be ignoring the voice of our community. In regard to this particular scheme amendment, let me first say that I don't believe this proposed change itself would be immediately detrimental to the CBD or any other area around the proposed local centre. I also understand that there is some alignment with regards to local planning scheme priorities for walkable access to local centres. In spite of this, I passionately believe this amendment is a step backwards from activating the CBD of Bunbury and inspiring economic prosperity for our small businesses. If we are going to get the CBD back on track, we will have to make many decisions, many of them in the right direction, in order to achieve this. There is no silver bullet or magic fix button, and there is no big one project or idea that will achieve this. It will be one decision at a time, and tonight's decision is one of them. The most glaring problem with this motion is the driver for the amendment itself. The applicant claims that there is an observed lack, and this is a quote, there is an observed lack of retail convenience servicing the residential population north and east of the subject land. The new local activity centre will fill an identified void in the local convenience provisions for surrounding residents. It's my observation, however, that this is purely the view of the applicant and that this view has driven the desired amendment from the outset. The City of Bunbury has carried out numerous strategies for obtaining feedback from our community over the last few years, and to my knowledge, including having the first of our community street meets, of which the residential area in question was the first. And to my knowledge, at no point out of these opportunities have the residents of this area mentioned the need for greater access to retail outlets or a local activity centre. In my brief assessment of the retail and grocery service to the residents surrounding the Homemaker Centre, I was able to find 5 local centres, all within 1.5 kilometres by vehicle from the physical centre of the Homemaker Centre. The distance from the surrounding suburbs themselves, in many cases, then halved to the distance to a local centre, an existing local centre, and in some cases, walking distance were reduced even further. The Praxis peer review of the Retail Sustainability Assessment summarises the issue in their conclusion, which says this: much of the report is based on the assumption that there is a lack of convenience retail servicing the incumbent resident population. This is not quantitatively or even qualitatively proven or discussed and is expected to be taken as a given by the reader, or by us tonight. Indeed, the site is only 2 kilometres from the city of Bunbury, whilst also close to Leishannock Quays and Spencer Street, Bunbury Plaza. And as such, the claim that there is an observed lack of convenience retailing servicing the population is unfounded, and the centre is unlikely to have any material effect on access to convenience retail for the surrounding population. Similarly, the turnover figures reported by MGA's own modelling do not back up this claim, with many centres trading at approximately 4,000 to 5,000 metres per square metre. Further to this, the average of each centre's productivity is only $5,088 a square metre, well below what would be thought to be a reasonable trading level. I'd also like to read the summary of the objections from the proprietors of the Bunbury Forum Shopping Centre and Centrepoint Shopping Centre, which are also struggling with tenancy rates in their complexes, and further highlight the problems with the amendment and the sustainability assessment. This amendment is undermining the current activity centre hierarchy, inconsistent with WAPC's Activity Centre for Greater Bunbury policy objectives, effectively operating as a neighbourhood centre with investments being diverted from larger centres to an out-of-town centre, compromising orderly and proper planning of the city, and has potential flaws in the proponent's submitted retail sustainability assessment, and noting current difficult conditions being experienced, the need for a more comprehensive review to be undertaken across the whole city.
Councillor Plum, that's just on 5 minutes. Right, so
Can I just finish up? I'm just summing up now.
Yep. Second to that? All in favour? Carry on.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry. Councillor McGreevy, one against.
Finally, Mr Deputy Mayor and Councillors, I'd like to address the strategic relevance of this motion. This agenda item states that there are 2 main areas of strategic relevance that this amendment fits into, among some others. Strategic relevance theme 2 states our goal as a thriving and dynamic economy that plays to its strengths and confidently presents to the world. Secondly, strategic relevance objective 3.2 states the goal as an irresistible city centre with thriving businesses and a vibrant inner city residential community. Councillors, this proposed development is not in the CBD of Bunbury. Our CBD is what needs to be thriving, and I can't see a thriving homemaker centre ever being presented as a location that is world renowned. The charming CBD of a historical port city with loads of residential apartments and vibrancy, however, could. Claiming that this development would have a flow-on effect to the CBD in order to meet these objectives is a bridge too far. One might then also argue that any development in the Bunbury LGA would also help meet the goals of the CBD. When we read this agenda item through a holistic lens of prosperity for the City of Bunbury, it fails to meet these criteria for relevance. The competition for retail and grocery service delivery would be further diluted should this development go ahead. Further vacancies in our retail spaces in the CBD and in existing shopping centre locations would be inevitable. This would not create a thriving and dynamic economy and an irresistible city centre. We should be strategically encouraging investors to focus their investment on inner city residential developments as close to the CBD as possible, and this amendment again fails in its relevance to create a vibrant inner city residential community. Councillors, in closing, to vote this motion through tonight would be a step backwards for economic prosperity for many of our existing businesses and local centres. It would be a step backwards for the activation of our CBD, and we have a long way to go to achieve a vibrant and dynamic city centre. Voting this amendment through tonight would further delay reaching that goal. Furthermore, we would be clearly ignoring the voice of Bunbury residents by voting for this amendment. Councillors, I strongly urge you to vote down the executive recommendation tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Plum. Is there a further speaker for?
I'm not for, but I actually have a question, so I can make my mind up if that's okay.
Councillor Brown, we just have a question, Councillor Brown. Do you want to ask your question now, Councillor Steele?
I mean, I know that this is actually not, we're not agreeing on what's actually going to be developed there, but I'm having very big concerns about the apartments there, and then not having any outside space to play. And I wouldn't want a family living there without any green space, and I do know there's Forster thing, and Coinda's school was about a 15-20 minute walk away. I've just done that, and There's nothing at PC Payne Park. So if we're doing this, what obligation would the developer have to provide some sort of, they're talking about livability with shop space, but families can't live and play in a shop. So what rights do we have, or what can we do to make this work, but also not let down our people that maybe want to live there?
Yeah, Councillor Steele, I will ask through the CEO to refer that question. Thank you, Mr. Barber.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, there's a requirement in the proposed amendment to prepare a local development plan for the site, which encompasses some of those requirements, and then the state planning framework, any residential component would need to comply with the relevant R codes, which has requirements to provide public open or local open space for the use of those residents. So any development that's proposed would have to comply with those requirements. As you said at the start, though, this is a scheme amendment, so we haven't got that detail.
Happy? Councillor Brown, you indicated you were happy to speak for.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Can everyone hear that? Yep. Off you go. Thanks, Councillor Brown.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor. One of the ways that we can generate and activate our empty commercial precincts is by getting people to live and work in those empty precincts. People activating our empty streets. This is not a new idea, and 100 years ago, that is what people did. They lived in row houses in Wellington Street, and Symonds Street, and above their shops in Victoria Street. They had low rents that allowed them to spend some of their pay on goods and services in the city. There were people that would buy a beer down the pub after working on the railway. Kids would be buying lollies from the deli, or mum would be buying a loaf of bread at the baker or Vitas from the grocery. They walked home, they had no cars, no need for parking. They activated Bunbury, and Bunbury thrived. The CBD in Bunbury is no longer affordable, and ownership is too fragmented to develop or incorporate affordable housing on its own. We need to look at other models and areas where we get relatively affordable development land and have a ground floor of retail or office subsidising a second and third floor residential accommodation. This is the model that we are looking at tonight, and a way of activating the Homemaker Centre. This could be the example of the development that we need to activate the rest of the city. I therefore ask you to vote for the accepted recommendation. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Brown. Further speaker against?
Mr Mayor.
Councillor Smith.
Mr Deputy Mayor, I've agonised over this executive recommendation ever since I first saw it on the agenda. Now, I've listened very carefully to the debate, and I've listened carefully to the proponent for and against. There's a couple of things that worry me. One is COVID-19 and the amount of empty shop space that is in Bunbury itself. I love the idea of the accommodation, but I'm worried about the size of the mini-mart or whatever it is. If it was a deli, I'd happily vote for it, but because it's a mini-mart, I'm just concerned that it's going to impact on other businesses in town. Mind you, that's not council's problem. That's people want to run the business the way they like. But my main concern is the oversupply of space in Bunbury and the CBD at the moment. I think this is not the right time for this. Certainly in the future I will support it, but I can't support it at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Smith, is there another speaker for?
I'd like to speak for, if I could.
Yes, Councillor Hayward.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Look, I would like to speak in support of this motion because I think now is exactly the right time for many of the reasons that have been raised. So what this does is add around 30 extra homes, which is growth in Bunbury. It's pretty hard to get a rental at the moment. I've had some feedback from friends who have been looking for some. It's quite a competitive market space, so there is a need for more housing. The style of shop that this is going to provide is something that there's not a lot of in Bunbury or across Bunbury, that small IGA style mini mart. And it's certainly in terms of a local space, there is a constituency over there in East Bunbury that would benefit from being able to have that local convenience as well. On top of that, it is COVID-19, and this kind of building, this kind of project work will provide employment in the near term, and I think that's something that we need to think about as well. And I think that, as Councillor Brown pointed out, there are some significant benefits for people in terms of livability, and there are some potential ideas, at least from council, around some further development in East Bunbury that would also be well serviced by this development. It's not going to go up overnight, so I think some of the immediate concerns around some of the current circumstances of July or June 2020, by the time this is constructed and open, certainly some time will have passed. And I think it also sends a very positive message, as Councillor Kosicek and others pointed out, in terms of that Bunbury is a developing place. So I would certainly encourage all councillors to support this. I'd also say that we did start this process about 2 years ago when we were briefed, and this is something that hasn't come quickly. There has been good groundwork done, and it also comes with the support of our officers. So I think we need to take that into consideration as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hayward. Is there another speaker against? No? Councillor McCleary.
I've heard the opposing debates. It still hasn't reduced my optimism for this particular development, if this development is to go through. It has a few more hoops to jump through, okay? We're not there yet. It is going to come back for us to discuss that. Right now, we're not discussing the development, but the chances of the development to actually be there by changing the scheme. Now, our Councillor Plum pointed out a few things which I'd like to respond to. He said that the reflection of the community is they don't want it. Well, there's one objection. I went through East Bunbury and asked, and everyone was excited about it. They don't see it as a detriment at all. They see it as progress for Bunbury. At long last, we've got off our hands. We're not in fear, and we're allowing the developers to come in with their creativity for Bunbury, and I think that's really, really important. It will enhance, it won't be a disadvantage for the CBD. I believe it will enhance the CBD because there'll be more people there. There will be a population that's in the apartments if it goes ahead, and they're not just going to go down there and buy their goodies. The coffee might be lousy, so they'll end up going into town for a decent coffee anyway. So they will spread out through the CBD. Yes, they won't probably go to the forum, they may go there every now and then, but they will tend to be pushed through Kumbana, through that way. So I see that as an advantage. Plus, no doubt that these will be what I call the metro families, whom they're modern. They like to buy their tea, not cook it. They like to nip down and to the wine bar and things like that. So I can see that happening in Bunbury and activating Bunbury more. There is no economic activation ever going to happen in Bunbury for years if we allow ourselves not to take a calculated risk with new things happening. If we just sit on our hands and think that those old buildings, which are really just sheds with facades at the front, if you go up and get onto the OO building and look over, you can see where all the roofing is, you can see what the buildings were really like, and some of them have been there since probably 1920 or something like that. The only way that they're going to be activated is either they're able to be built to go up, or they're demolished and restart again, and people love new buildings anyway. So activation in the city for buildings development is going to be extremely slow. But we can stimulate the population to come to the city still, and so it will be through new developments around the perimeters that will assist the city as it stands now. So I don't believe that we should sit even if it is only temporary until the COVID or the inoculations come out, they want to go and find somewhere safe for their children. We may end up with a population boost in a year, for a year or two over here. Who knows? It's something I always like to look on the optimistic side of things. Councillor Brown, and I want to bring back to what he said, it's very important to remember what Councillor Brown said. Years ago, we used to live, I shouldn't say we, I'm too young. We lived on the top of the building and our business was on the bottom. And we went for walkies around the different towns and spent our money in the different shops, etc. This is what we're returning to. This is the local way of shopping, the community, becoming that tight community again. And we need to really get back to that and look after our own community. And we can better do that by being closer. We're going to have that exact same model over Neck and Barn. Okay, so remember that. And also,
So, Councillor McCreary, that's just 5 minutes, so if you can just summarise, that'd be good. If somebody, you can have 30 seconds. You can have 30 seconds to summarise. That's a clear yes.
I hope that you will. It is not the development that you're voting for at this particular time. We can have that argument another day. But the actual scheme. So please, at least, give them the benefit of the doubt and let them bring back something that will be able to vote positively on for Bunbury. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McCleary. I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
Sorry, Mr Deputy Mayor, can I just ask a quick question for clarity?
No? Sorry, Councillor Plum, I've put it. So, those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Councillor Plum and Councillor Smith were against. That motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. I'll go get the mayor.
Thank you, Councillor McGuell. Item 11.1, someone move that the request for leave be approved. Councillor Smith, Councillor McGuell, all in favour?
Aye.
That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Councillors, members of the public, officers, thank you very much for your attendance tonight. I declare this meeting closed at 6:13 p.m.